It's time once again for another episode of the Buckhead Business Show. Being brought to you by the Buckhead Business Association. Broadcasting live from the Pro Business Channel studios in Atlanta. And now, here's your host for today's episode.
Well, good morning. It's a beautiful day in Buckhead, as most days are in Buckhead. We have a Chamber of Commerce style of weather, and we're certainly going to enjoy it together. We've got two phenomenal guests. I'm your host this morning, Michael Moore. We serve on this channel, and we do the program here on the basis of sponsorship by the Buckhead Business Association, and we're focusing on learning things that we need to do to be better leaders. We need to focus on things that we're learning to be a better community leader, as well as a personal leader of not only our families but our business. This morning in the studio, I've got Artie Ruderman, who serves here at the Pro Business Channel, to be with us. We're going to have a Georgia Business Radio show come up next, and we've got some more guests coming in. But today, I've got the honor and the pleasure of having two superstars in the marketplace. We've got those authors, we've got those other radio hosts, we've got just information that's going to make a difference for you. So we've got Aubrey Daniels, who is many of you have. He needs no introduction, but I'll do that in just a minute. And we've also got Christie Walters, who is one of those national speakers who has come in the room today to talk about some very special things in her world, because she's a trainer. And she's also, as I mentioned, a radio host, and she's been at this marketplace for quite a while. And I actually have some fun of participating every month with her at the National Speakers Association group here in Atlanta. So we're in for some treats today. So let's start out with Aubrey. Mr. Daniels, you are one of those PhD fellows who's been doing this for just more than 1 or 2 years.
About 40.
About 40 of them. Aubrey Daniels, he's chairman of his own company, which is Aubrey Daniels International, and I've known him in our marketplace for quite a while. His organization is pretty well timeless in looking at behavioral principles and how they imply or used down in the workplace. He's been working most recently to kind of re-energize that workplace, because there are a lot of changes dealing with age and height both, right?
I'm getting shorter.
Well, he's optimizing performance. He's making tools to optimize and achieve lasting results. And of course, I'm going to share this little secret. And it'll be a test later. He's published 7 books about performance, systems, workplace safety, and management issues. And we're going to wrap up at the end and really talk about culture, which is how we're going to move into the second part of our show this morning. But I think he's brought along a book today, and if you want to drop your business card in that slot in your radio, we'll have a drawing a little bit later. But I'm going to get the autographed copy. I can pretty well guarantee that. You are right here in Buckhead, so you're truly a Buckhead business, and you've been here for a number of years, like you said, over 10. And that makes you a native in Buckhead, because everybody's moving in here. So, Aubrey, how in the world did you get started on a train of 7 books?
I don't know. You know, if in high school they'd given a superlative for a person least likely to write a book, it would have been me.
You got that 2 years running, didn't you?
And I don't know. You know, it's one of those things like, I think it must be like having a baby. I've never personally had one. I've got 2 daughters. But you know, I hear many women say, you know, I'm not going through this again. And if we have a second child, you're going to have it, to her husband. And I say this thing, when I wrote my first book, I said, I'm not going to do this again. And then, you know, time fades, and you say, well, maybe one more.
Well, I think because of your experience in the marketplace, and we'll talk about your degree in a moment. I know that everybody's interested to go, you're a PhD, but you didn't operate last week, right?
No, I did not.
But you work on your latest book title, which is kind of interesting. As you said, you've been doing this for a number of years, and I'm sure you've accumulated that knowledge where you've finally said, boy, I think I've got enough thoughts to put a book together.
Yeah.
But the latest one, Life's a Picnic. So talk about how in the world you got to that point.
Well, what I would be called a behaviorist. You know, you can divide psychologists into cognitive ones, which study the mind, and behaviorists study behavior. And so what we brought to business is we don't need to read people's minds to figure them out or motivate them or whatever. We just need to look at their behavior. And we learn from our environment. And if the environment teaches the wrong thing, then we don't blame them for learning the wrong thing. But managers almost never look at the environment first. They look at the person and say, you know, what's wrong with you? Why you not act like we want you to act? And we say that's data to say that something we're doing is wrong. And the PICNIC basically is an acronym for positive immediate certain and negative immediate certain consequences. And that is that most behavior migrates toward positive immediate certain consequences. We drive around a parking lot to find a close space when, we spend more time trying to find a space than we save with the parking space. but we tend to go toward things that have an immediate payoff. And it's hard. You might define maturity as the ability to delay gratification, or as we say, positive reinforcement. And so many of the things that cause problems in our society are things that have, in many cases, a negative immediate consequence in the beginning, although they have a positive consequence later on. Some people don't like to take medicine, but we know that the medicine will have a positive effect on the disease, but they take it and nothing immediate happens to them. And they choke on it or whatever immediately. So we begin to try to understand behavior. If they're having a problem with safety, don't do the things they're supposed to do in safety, then what are the things that we can put into place that would cause them to have a positive experience for doing that as opposed to some negative, which is natural?
Well, reinforcement, we've all read those books, Who Moved My Cheese, or how the experiments are not, what is it called, double-blind experiments?
Yeah.
And I was reading one the other day about the knee surgery. And I just couldn't figure it out. They said that 53% of people had a better result not getting cut on. I couldn't figure out how they validated that one. But I've watched a lot of people limp, and I'm wondering, did they have the option or not?
Well, this is the problem that we find with the general population. They don't understand science. And quite frankly, people in the media don't do either. They'll have interviewed two people and think this is a trend.
Well, they OJT'd it, They report on the stories, and people read them, and they got promoted. And
right, sure.
They never figured it out. So back to the story of having a very successful career and being an international speaker and being a trainer, putting together these number of different books. I'm always interested. What's one of those interesting encounters you've had with one of those folks who read your book and gained some result that shared it with you?
Well, we've got a class going on right now, and I introduced the class saying it's going to be a life-changing experience. And one of the positive things I get, is I get almost every week I get somebody's retired and said, it was the best training I've had in my life, and it changed what I did at work and what I did at home. Because we're talking about behavior, and, you behave at work, you behave at home. So
well, it's normally that way.
It transfers immediately. It's not like we're teaching them something to do for business that they wouldn't be able to do at home. And, I heard Paul O'Neill, who was the president of Alcoa, a couple of days ago in a video on the web. And he was talking about that he ran Alcoa so that every employee would have a meaningful experience every day. Notice something that would have a meaning in their lives. Mm-hmm. And that's a tall order for most business people. But I think he's absolutely right, that you live most of your waking hours at work. Mm-hmm. And if that's something you hate doing, then, you have a wasted life.
Yeah, stop working overtime.
Right. Exactly.
Do that. I was with, as you said, one of those CEOs the other day who talked about taking on a company that had not made a profit in, 6 or 8 years. And the board didn't seem to be very concerned because that particular company was just kind of a shell to take care of some other things that needed to be done. He went in and said, guys, the board has told me that we could make profits. It's not unheard of. So he said, but how we're going to do it? I'm not going to change anything here. You're going to tell me what to change, right, and you're going to tell me when to change it,
right,
and you're going to tell me how we're going to change it. And my goal is here. And so he said, it's amazing. I was going to have a meeting in 3 days. By the time I got back to my office, I already had notes and people standing at my door that wanted to meet tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
And didn't want to wait 3 days
Sure.
to have that company meeting.
Sure.
And he said, this is not just a small company meeting. This was 3,000 people.
Yeah, right. Well, he was smart to have had those experiences.
And a year later, guess what? They were now profitable.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
He said, I didn't do it. My folks did it, and it made a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of what you see in our marketplace for leaders happening and things going right, talk about some of the things that you've seen a positive impact in what we're doing in our marketplace and our society today.
Well, I think finally there are leaders that are waking up to understand they don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And, it's like no one of us is as smart as all of us. So it's a movement, I think, to involve employees in figuring out what we need to do, just like the person you talked about. That, I remember a fellow who took over TaylorMade Golf, and he was a salesperson, and the president had kind of screwed things up, so he says, we want you to take it over. And he said, well, I don't know anything about it. And quite frankly, I think that's often the best recommendation for a leader. And so he called his group together and he said, look, everybody knows me. I don't know what to do. So what do you think? And some person spoke up and says, well, I think we need to do X. And he said, that sounds pretty
How many
good.
of y'all think we need to do
That sounds pretty good.
We'll do my majority.
And then he said, somebody else said something different. And he said, well, that sounds pretty good too.
We're going down one of those forked trails, right?
But I think he was on the right track, and I think if he'd felt like he had to be the boss, then he would have probably failed.
I understand. Well, just talk about culture change. You've seen a lot of things happen in your over 10 years of service in the marketplace of corporate America. So talk about and kind of put it in decades. 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, what's happened?
I think what's happened, of course, is that most people were trained to go to business and do what the boss said. And young people don't do that anymore. There was a period where people said, you got to tell them why. You don't have to tell them why. You just have to do the right thing. If you do the right thing, they don't have a why. Mm-hmm. And they ask why, tell you you're doing something wrong. And even with your children. So why do I need to do this, Daddy? Well, if you can't tell them what the reason for that is, then you're in trouble. So that worked very well. People went to work and they did things methodically, and it worked okay. And then, of course, and I think, you can attribute this to world events and all sorts of things, but the fact of the matter is it's changed. I think what's happened, in part, is causing a lot of problems today, is that parents have been told to have a positive parenting kind of style without understanding the science of behavior. And so what they've done is they've reinforced the wrong behaviors at the wrong time in the wrong way and not punished behaviors that they should have decreased. Sure. And so, people get the idea that, I'm the center of the universe and that you need to respond to me. Well, that's not quite right. Well. But in fact, it's a step forward, I think, in terms of that any group that you talk to, the group knows more than any person in it.
That's right.
And so
it's not the lemming approach; it's something a lot different.
Right, exactly. And so anybody that feels, and I worked in medical field for a long time, and the doctors taught to be right. Mm-hmm. And I was, of course, dealing with psychiatrists, and they would tell nurses to do things when they didn't know what they were supposed to do.
That's right.
And that doesn't go over long anymore.
And we're going to talk a little bit more as we wrap up about the culture process, which I know you're an expert in that process. But before we kind of wrap this segment up, just go ahead and share with us your book name and how they find you. And
well, it's called Life's a Picnic When You Understand Behavior. It really does simplify a lot of things, and that's what people tell us all the time, that this really makes sense. And the thing that we work with companies on is that the best way to run a company is also the best way to manage people.
And you're right here on Peachtree Road, just down the street.
Yep.
Sure, we walked over this morning.
Daniels@aubreydaniels.com.
It's
real easy.
Okay. Best phone number to get you at your office?
678-904-6140.
Right. And the last question is, you've got a website, I'm sure.
Yeah, aubreydaniels.com.
Aubrey, that's pretty simple.
Pretty easy.
Now, he spells it A-U-B-R-E-Y for those of you.
Just like the girl.
That's just like the girl, but he's definitely a man of knowledge. He's not a man of knowledge. Well, thank you for being with us this morning. As I said, the show is being brought to you by the Buckhead Business Association. My name is Michael Moore. We've been visiting with Aubrey Daniels, and that we've learned about the life being a picnic. And we're going to talk a little bit about what you do while you're at the picnic a little bit in a moment with Christie Walters. Now, Christie is one of those young ladies who's got some skill sets trained by somebody who we've got all recognized, and also she's been through the school of good knocks because she's now just become a professional speaker. And you've had to put your voice out there, and you've been standing on the platforms, you've been touring, but you're really a trainer at heart, and you really want to get the story out there for people so they can understand. So, Christine, tell us how you got into the business that you're doing, and tell us what we need to know this morning about.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I have been in the business world really working with small technology firms for the last 25 years, primarily focused in sales and marketing. And as much as I loved the small business environment, I didn't like the volatility that came along with it. So when I came to a crossroads in my career a couple of years ago and decided I was going to part ways with my current company, I sat down with my business coach and I said, something's missing here. The things that I love, the things that I want to do are not being embraced in the day-to-day operations of the companies that I'm going to work for. And I think that I could help a lot of small businesses do this if that was the only thing I was focused on. And this was educating and coaching employees to be their best self, and in turn, they would do the best for the company.
Now, I know you went through a process. You just didn't go out and hang your shingle up and become an immediate
I kind of did, actually, Michael.
So you can still OJT this coaching thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
I did, yes. So I really did. In fact, I just went through an intensive program with Coaches Training Institute over the last 6 months because I spent the first year of my business coaching employees and realizing that I was starting to get into areas of their lives that I was like, gosh, I'm not sure I'm a good steward of this given my current level of credentials. So I'm certainly not nearly as credentialed as Aubrey is here, but it really was important to me to be able to hold that close for my clients.
Well, and I wanted to go there with just a little thought because we all have a lot of experiences. My father used to say we're the summation of all the experiences we had up until this moment. And you exactly exemplify that because you had been a successful person in companies.
Yeah.
You had been a leader. You'd been a teacher. You'd been probably even preaching to some of your staff sometimes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then you went out and practiced most of that. But as we changed, as the culture changed over the last, really for a lot of people, the last 10 to 15 years, because, I mean, everybody kind of draws those bookmarks out there. We've got these millennials, these Xers, and these whatevers. But in reality, we have not only have 9/11, which made a great change 15 years ago, but then we have '08, which made a second change. And it wasn't 10 years between them. So we kind of compressed our decades for business. And we are all sitting in a room over the age that have been through both of those segments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of them a little younger than others. But those two pivot points, regardless of what you call the age group or anything else, people learned that they had to have experience, they had to have expertise, and they had to go back and re-educate themselves to take care of new challenges because things change. So you sought to be a coach, and you picked out a specific track, and you used it to fill in some of the gaps. So talk about some of the serious things that you think are coming around the curve in coaching.
Oh gosh, serious things in coaching. One is I love the rhetoric that is happening today in most corporate environments, and that's that coaching is not just relegated to the C-suite level of an organization. That if you're going to grow employees, you have to start early and you have to coach consistently over a period of time. And it's also, one of the things that we talk about in coaching is that it's not about me being a sage. It's not about me being the subject matter expert and coming in and telling you my way to do things. It's about me helping you eliminate those blind spots, eliminate that noise that's getting in your way, and helping you be the best version of you. You are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and it's my job to bring that out in you. And whether that's a personal element, I mean, this is certainly plays into general life coaching, but it is very applicable in the corporate environment. And my desire is that, the statistics around engagement in the workplace are staggering. 73% of employees state that they are not actively engaged and happy in their workplace. That's amazing, right? 73%.
Could they just sleep in and maybe not mess up the company?
Exactly. And, that's collecting a paycheck. And when you're spending so much time in an endeavor that doesn't fuel you, you're just going to lose so much in other parts of your life, too.
Well, we have so many, quote, plans, programs, tests, and abilities now. How do you keep an employee, quote, motivated, or how do you measure what their reluctance to show up or not show up to work is, and how do you really gauge performance anymore?
Yeah.
What kind of tools or what kind of ideas are you using in companies to make a difference today?
Yeah, well, you certainly don't do it once a year on a piece of paper, right? So that would be the first step in the process. And I think a lot of companies are really coming to that realization. What you do is you hire correctly. You hire for the right.
Whoa, that's a whole different story.
Yeah,
there.
Exactly. We'll have a different show on that, right? But you hire for the right individual for the role that you're filling, not just to fill a gap. And you have to also have some focus on the individual themselves. If you can work within the things that are going to motivate them, the purpose that drives them, then they're going to work 150% harder than a command and control environment that you might be used to in your corporate.
Well, interesting, the personality test last show, we had somebody in talking about the different quick ways to measure people.
Sure.
It's amazing how most people do. They could go through life and never really know how to interact. I'm sure you've seen that, Aubrey, in your expertise. And we're going to see that in the last segment as we talk about how you really communicate via the tools. We're all visual. Most of us are visual. 73% or more are visual. Very few are auditory anymore, especially since everything's on video. But how do you get the right information? How do you synthesize the right stuff to put in front of employees to actually let them be part of their growth? You want to speak about that a second?
Yeah, I don't think there's one answer to that, honestly. I think, and that's part of the reason why I have 3 cornerstones to my business, and it is strategy, because you have to have the right strategy and systems in place to support the people that are working for you. It's training, because education is important. A lot of what you just described is people don't have the skills naturally. They weren't born with this innate ability to lead in the way that you want them to lead. And then finally, it's ongoing coaching, because sitting in a classroom for one day helps you for that day. You might get everyone really energized and excited, but I guarantee you, if I walk back in there 6 weeks later, if you haven't done any ongoing coaching to reinforce that, it's all gone.
Well, I think you're right. I think, one, we're not going to figure out how to hire today, and we're also not going to figure out the right model to have everybody learn and apply, because so many things in jobs today are really, they're still OJT to some degree, but they're actually planned OJT.
Yes.
So we're not teaching people to be brain surgeons by showing them how to work on feet.
Right. Yes, exactly.
That's one of those. That's a very visual. So, Christie, how do people get in touch with you?
So you can find me on at ChristieWalters.com. I also have a podcast as well called The Why and the Buy, and that is at thewhyandthebuy.com. It's also available on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. That's been a very exciting endeavor for me, and you can always call me 770-687-6678, and I am happy to do a sample coaching session with you if you want to see what this is all about.
Well, I think you're going to have to sign me up there.
Yes, I love it.
Now, the last thing I want to mention is I noted in your bio today, and we didn't talk about it, but you worked with one of my friends.
I do. I still do. Jeffrey Gittimer. Jeffrey has been in and out of my sales career life, whether he knows it or not.
He's been in and out of a lot of our lives.
Well, this
his
is
little
true.
Books.
That's right.
He's written many books.
Yeah. So I had a sales manager give me the Little Red Book of Selling about 15 years ago, and what I love about Jeffrey's material is that it is not rocket science. Sales is life. It is about interacting with people. It's about connecting with people. And it's about giving value that's not just about you. So he does a really good job of articulating that, and he's pretty simple. He doesn't have a lot of flowery words.
No, he's
Jeffrey.
pretty simple, short words. Well, thank you. I just wanted to include that because he's a friend of Atlanta's, and certainly a friend of sales folks in general with us.
Absolutely.
So we've been visiting with Christie Walters, and I'm sure you're going to dial on our website and learn some very interesting things. And I like the idea of the title of Why You Buy.
Yes, thank you. The Why and the Buy. That's it.
Now we move on. We got Celeste Simmons, our third guest for today, not our last guest, but happens to be our final guest for this half-hour segment. Now, she's been in marketing for 14 years, and she started in the technical writing side and has really got involved. And she is also a published author. So we've got a lot of content being delivered around this table today. She's actually, her and her team can communicate with us via the web and help build websites that are very, very catchy. And on a daily business, you're working with a lot of people who are now beginning to look at how they use Facebook, how they use LinkedIn, how they use Google+, how to use YouTube, and one I'm not even familiar with, Houzz. I'll let you talk about that. And Pinterest and a lot more. But she is a social media pro. So, Celestine, in 14 years, you've seen a lot of change. So talk about why you chose a niche of doing this as opposed to just writing those good technical manuals.
Well, it's a lot more exciting. It certainly does change.
So you're in a job
on
you enjoy
daily
doing.
basis.
You're not one of the 73%.
No. No, I do enjoy doing it. It's difficult almost to keep up with all the changes that go on in social media. SEO, websites as a whole, Google brings things down the pike. We have to keep up or we get left behind. And social media was one of those things that in business, when I'd worked in the corporate world, I saw that that was really important. The ones that were not active on social media were the ones that were getting left behind. And whether business owners realize it or not, they do have a reputation online. And even if they're not watching, it's still there. Other people can create their reputation even if they are not.
Well, there's been such a learning curve, and we've talked about three different. All three of our guests are focused on that today. As things are changing, whether we want them to or not. So, as I said in your introduction, there's one term I wasn't even at all familiar with, and so talk to us about the same question I asked Christie a little earlier. What's coming down the pipe? What are you seeing? You've been in the web business and the social media business for the time it's been getting much more active and much more measurable. So, talk about some things business owners need to be looking at.
Okay, I think one of the biggest changes this year, we all know that video is huge, and it's definitely not going away. It's really essential to have video on your website, as well as your company Facebook page, your Google Plus page. Video codes, once you load them to YouTube or Vimeo, they can be shared on all of your social media sites. And so that's really important. It's important, even if it's a short 30 or 60-second video, it's really important to have one. It gives you a boost in SEO, and it's an easy shareable format across all your social media channels. You can now share videos, little snippet videos on Twitter. You can now do it on LinkedIn as of just like a month ago. And
if you're
this
an
is
influencer,
something,
not everybody.
That's true. But it's on those pages, and it's so accessible now. It's a force to be reckoned with, and so it's one of those things that I see. It's not an option anymore. If you want to be seen as a reputable business and a business on the move, you've got to have some video behind you.
Okay, so I'm behind the times. I don't have a video on the web now. So if I start looking at how to put it there and when to put it there, you mentioned Vimeo, you mentioned some other initials, you mentioned all these social media tools. Christie's a sole practitioner. Aubrey's got a real company, but somewhere in between there's the rest of the world.
Okay.
So talk about what's your counseling look like for those poor people? Not the coaching part, but the counseling. You need to put your head in your hands and start moving forward.
That's true. Okay, so what we typically do for clients is we assess, we just do an overall assessment on what their website looks like, what it's lacking, and then from that part of what we see that's lacking, what they have versus what they don't have, we make a step-by-step process of the order that they should go in order to get their website improved, in order to improve their reputation online. And so it doesn't have to be attacked all 10 things at once. You can just start it step by step. And a lot of these things, in fact, most of these things are really affordable because the tools are in our hand every day. You can use your cell phone. It doesn't have to be a $1,000 video produced by some big company. You can actually do a slideshow video. Snippet videos are just like $100 now, or less. They're based on programs. You just write a script, you put together some images. It's so easy to do, and it's because it's a really competitive market, the video place. So all these little programs, you can just buy a monthly subscription plan, produce it yourself, and within an hour, you can have it on your website. It's that easy.
So it all goes back to about willingness.
Right.
Measuring of your time. Now let's talk about that dangerous part, which is measuring the results.
Okay.
How do you really measure that? You talk about it being so great, but how do you begin to really see if you're getting any traction other than someone knocking on your door and coming in and becoming a new customer?
Well, the best way to do it, the irrefutable way to do it, is to have a Google tracking code on the back of your website, and your webmaster can add one of those Google tracking codes. That's free. I don't know if anybody knows that, but a Google tracking code is free. It only takes the actual labor of putting it there, and then after that, you can log into analytics.google.com and see how you're doing. You can track your paid traffic if you're watching it on Google AdWords, or you can track your organic traffic if it's all by social social media, video outlets, and post things like that. So that's the best way to do it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing with us how the test and measure theory, but let's assume we're all not smart enough to test and measure ourselves, so we just need to call you, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And how do people get in touch with you?
Okay, they can go to bigsocialmarketing.com. The contact page sends us an email, or they're welcome to call us at 678-315-0112.
Well, very good. Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and I'm going to ask that last final question. We were going to have a little bit of Q&A time. We were out of time on this segment, but if you were going to do just one video today, would it really be the intro video? Would you deliver a piece of cool information that no one else had delivered yet, or would you do a 30-second, a 45-second, or 60-second? Just kind of address what you do as a first video activity if you were a brand new company and you'd been listening to this station today and you're going to go out and do something this afternoon. What would it be?
If I was a brand new company and I did not have a video, if I could choose, I would do 60 seconds, an informational video of what makes you different. That's what I would do.
So write it down, plan it, speak it, practice it, and in 60 seconds, tell your story.
That's right.
She sounds like a great idea to me. That seems like a great piece of information. Well, thank you for being with the Buckhead Business Show today. We've had 3 fabulous guests in studio. Mr. Daniels, who, 7 books. I can think about that. He had to write the first one, though, so we all want to be authors. So thank you for doing that. And we're looking forward to Life's a Picnic. So pick it up, read it, and work with it. Also, Ms. Walters, who has now, become a coach.
Yes.
And she's become a radio host, and she's here with us today, and she shared the idea that you really have to learn and then deliver to your clients what they need, and there's maybe some personal learning along the way, right?
Always some personal learning.
We change and grow up, and we've talked about major pivots in our life. And then lastly, even though you know all this stuff, you really do have to communicate with your customers and your future customers as well as your past customers and keep your story fresh in front of them. So it's been a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you, radio guests. We can get in touch with all those. Please go to our site, probusinesschannel.com. And also you can go to the buckheadbusinessshow.com and get the information. You can see us online. But mainly we want you to be part of the Buckhead Business Association. Come down to our monthly events, our weekly events. Matter of fact, tonight we're going to be having one of our monthly after hours. But each Thursday morning we meet at the City Club of Buckhead, and we learn just like we learned today. Good information that we can carry forward in our business every day, and we'll find some people who either know how to help us or need our help. So it's always good to be with those kind of folks. Again, I'm Michael Moore, your host here at the Buckhead Business Show on the Pro Business Channel. That's a wrap.
Thank you for joining us and our guests on the Pro Business Channel. Use the social media links here to share today's show and stay tuned for the next episode of the Buckhead Business Show. Brought to you by the Buckhead Business Association.